In this Elden Ring Nightreign video, we're going to be going through the best relics in the game. I'm going to be going through some of the general relics and what their effects are and why they're good, as well as the character effects that are specific to each class and talking about why they're so good. We're going to get into the exact specifics of what these relics do. This is not like a general hypothesis on the effects of these, but we're going to get into the actual numbers of what they represent. So I haven't done these in a specific order. I didn't like rank them from best to least best or anything like that. And this is not all the relics in the game. These are the ones that I think are the best. But we're going to start out with attack power permanently increased for each Evergaol prisoner defeated. This is 5% per Evergaol that you clear. This means theoretically that if you cleared like 6 or 7 Evergaols on a map, you could have plus 30%, plus 35% damage, which is huge. And if you're on a team that also has this and you all prioritize this, you can get a lot of damage that way. That's probably the best way to use this. And one of the new relics with the event also starts you with a stone sword key. So if your whole team has that relic, you'll have 3 stone sword keys at the beginning, and you can hit at least 3 Evergaols easily without having to go find more keys. So that is a very, very strong one. And I think it has the highest potential damage out of any of the relics. Note that this doesn't stack, meaning that like you can't put this buff on your relics like multiple times in order to get 10% or 15% per Evergaol prisoner fought. Next up is attack power up when facing poisoned enemies or attack power up when facing frostbitten enemies. This is a 10% increase for each one of these. So if the target is both poisoned and frostbitten, it would be 20%. And this is really, really strong. A lot of meta builds for like Executor and Duchess out there use both poison and frost. So you can get this reliably. I would just say one tip, try to avoid dealing fire damage in any way. That way you do not strip off the frostbite, because then you'll lose that extra 10% damage. And frostbite itself actually debuffs the resistances of the target, increasing your damage anyway. So you want to not remove that frostbite if possible. And note that these don't stack, meaning you can't stack up like 3 attack power versus poison or 3 attack power versus frostbitten and get 30% damage. But you can have both of these to get 20% if they have both status effects. There's also a relic effect for this against rotted enemies as well for 10% attack power, which is also good. It's just rarer to get that effect, whereas these other two can be applied from the very beginning of the game depending on what characters you're playing with. Next up is physical attack up and magic attack up. I didn't include holy and fire here, although they do the same thing. And that's because holy damage is, you're really only going to be doing holy damage on Revenant most of the time. You might get a holy weapon, but the predominant amount of damage on that weapon will still probably be physical damage in a lot of cases, depending on like what weapon it is. The same with fire damage. Revenant might have some fire spells and it can boost those fire spells, but physical attack's going to apply to all physical damage, whether it's spells or attacks. So that's going to be strong for a lot of characters, while the holy and fire will only probably be strong for Revenant and maybe some specialized builds. And magic attack up is obviously for Recluse to boost her damage, because 95% of her spells do magic damage. And the percentage is 4.5% by default, 5.5% at +1, and 6.5% at +2. And these actually stack, so if you could get physical attack up +2 times 3 on 3 different relics on a character, they would have a lot of damage right out of the gate, especially if you can stack them with some of these other effects I already mentioned. That can get really, really strong. Next is improved weapon attack power. This is for a specific weapon type. This is a 6% increase, and this is just strong overall. It's not quite as much as the physical attack up 2, but what's great about it is it's just going to increase your damage as a whole with that weapon type. So if you know you're going to be using a specific weapon type, this is good. If you want to be a little bit more flexible on your weapon type, then maybe physical attack up is better. But keep in mind that the attack power is going to go up on that weapon type. It doesn't matter what damage type it does in this case, whereas physical attack up is only going to apply to like physical damage. So it could be better to have attack power up with a certain weapon if you know you're going to be playing with that weapon. And this does stack as well, so you can stack this up to 3 times, getting more damage. Next is improved initial standard attack. This is the first R1 in an R1 attack chain from any character, and this applies to Iron Eye as well, because he technically has an R1 chain. The damage increase on this first attack is 13%, and again, you can put this on 3 different relics, making that higher and higher. And this is really good in a lot of cases, particularly if you're playing Iron Eye, because sometimes you can only get one shot, or you want to like one-shot a trash enemy and then move to the next enemy, so you'll get max damage on that first shot. But something I want to mention is that this does not apply to a running R1 attack. So if you're playing like on Executor or Raider or Wilder, and you have this, but you do a running R1 attack, you actually will not benefit from this. So if you're running into gap close and you attack with R1 right away, even the attack after that initial sprinting R1 and your first R1 after that will not count. So you have to be not sprinting in order to get full benefit of this. Next is Starting Ornament, deals poison, frost, or even bleed, and this is really good for setting status effects, and obviously you can also do damage types, like if you're playing, I don't know, Iron Eye, and you know you're going to be facing the Dark Rift Knight and you need lightning, like you can put lightning on there. But these specific status effects can be really strong. Keep in mind that when you get the status effects on the weapon, though, it will reduce the damage those weapons do by 15%. So if you're going for pure damage, you don't want to take one of those. Like if you're trying to like go the physical damage route, pump up as much damage as you can, you definitely don't want to reduce the physical damage you're doing with one of these status effects. But if you're trying to play into the status effect build where trigger poison and then you get the attack power increase against poisoned enemies, that can be a good way to do that easily. The next one is Taking Attacks improves attack power. This actually improves your attack power by 15%, which is substantial for 10 seconds, and it refreshes each time you take damage. This can be really good on a Raider who is just being aggressive and tanking through hits. It can be good on a Guardian who might take chip damage from blocking to further increase their damage, or you know, any other character that's playing like really aggressively. Attack power applies to any damage that you do, so it's really good on any character, but it does have to plan for getting hit, which obviously some characters don't want to plan for that. Like if you're playing Recluse, you don't want to plan on getting hit because you can die easily, or same goes for Revenant. But you might consider taking this on a melee character because you will be getting hit sometimes. And note also that one does not stack, so you can't stack this up multiple times. Next is Poison or Rot in the Vicinity, increases your attack power by 12% for 20 seconds. This is a very strong bonus if you're playing a melee character. If you're playing Iron Eye and you're kind of going for like a poison build, it only really benefits you if you're right next to the character when you set poison, which you may or may not depending on the scenario. So you're going to get less benefit than maybe an Executor would get or a Duchess would get. But still, that can be really, really strong. Again, this is another relic you can't stack multiple instances of this to get, you know, 24, 36%, etc. Okay, moving out of the damage dealing ones for a second, let's take a look at Flask also heals allies. This is a really, really strong one in my opinion because it actually heals your allies for 50% of the value you heal yourself with. And if you're playing like a Revenant or you just want to be a support character in general, maybe you're playing Guardian, it's just a strong one to have. Like if your whole team had this, you would need less potions in general, and there are dormant powers that increase the effectiveness of your healing potion, which then will translate into more health for your allies. So if you don't know what to pick and you don't have really good relics, this can be a really strong one. Next is Physical Damage Negation. This is 10%, and the only reason I mentioned Physical Damage Negation here instead of the other damage negation types is that it's the most common damage type you'll take. Physical damage will be the majority of damage you'll take when you're playing. If you're facing a specific boss, like if you're doing the event, you might want lightning damage negation to get more lightning damage negation. But this can be really strong in helping you stay alive. Next is Partial HP Restoration on post-damage attacks. I really, really like this one if you're playing an aggressive melee character. Like if you're playing like a Duchess or a Raider, or if you're playing an Executor who's going for bleed, poison, frost, status effects, or even a Wilder, or even a Guardian. A lot of times you can just tank through the damage that you're taking through trash camps and bosses. Like if you know the boss isn't going to kill you if it hits you, but you can heal back the health, sometimes it's better to just spam attack through its attacks, trying to take it down quickly so that you save time and can clear more and get to a higher level, which results in a better chance of beating a boss at the end of the day, or at the end of the run. Next is the increased HP, increased FP, and increased stamina from very specific Night Lord relics. This is 100 HP, 25 FP, and 10 stamina, or the equivalent of 5 Vigor, 5 Mind, or 5 Endurance. It's the single highest stat buff from those types of buffs that you can get. Like plus 3 Vigor is obviously lower than 100 HP, it's 60. So these are really, really strong if you want like a one-off stat buff. Next is Max FP permanently increases after releasing Sorcerer's Rise mechanism. This one gives you plus 18% max FP after you open a Sorcerer's Rise, which is really, really strong. This will equivalent to 30 to 40 FP by the end of your run if you're playing a caster class, less than that if you're not. But keep in mind, what's really strong about this is that you can trigger this multiple times in one run. The relics don't stack, so you can't put multiple instances of this relic, but if you unlock 2 rises or 3 rises, you're going to get that 18% multiple times, which can give you a metric boatload of FP. Next up is max FP with 3+ staves or sacred seals equipped. This is actually 50 FP, and this is really easy to do on Recluse or Revenant because you start with 1 to begin with, and then if you just pick up 2 from a church or a fort, which they guarantee to drop most of the time, you can be at 3 like within a couple minutes of the game starting, if not faster than that. And 50 FP at the beginning of a run is like 50 to 70% more FP than you already have. So that's really, really strong really early in a run. Particularly if you're like playing Revenant and you don't have a way to get your FP back like Recluse does. Next is defeating enemies charges the art gauge. This is actually 5%, which is huge. If you wipe out a pack of 4 enemies as you're running to an objective, that's 20% increase like that fast. And keep in mind your art gauge also charges when you attack and also naturally over time. So this makes it so you can use your ultimate art a lot. And it's really good if you like to use it aggressively, like if you're playing Iron Eye, Wilder. It's really strong on Wilder. It's not so bad on Guardian too if you like to AoE a lot, play aggressively with it, or even Revenant. It's just really strong in general. It's one I can recommend to just about any build. This is another one that doesn't stack though, so you can't put like 3 of these on there and get 15% per enemy. I think that would be busted. Another one that's really worth mentioning is stamina recovers on successful attacks. This one gives you +2 stamina back on a successful attack, and this is really good for characters that usually spam R1 attacks, like a Duchess, an Executor, Iron Eye, or maybe even a Wilder. Those characters tend to use rapid attacking weapons, or maybe even a Revenant, and this allows them to continue their onslaught without having to wait for their stamina recovery a lot of times, particularly like on Iron Eye. A lot of times he'll drain his whole stamina bar just attacking, and then he's got to wait for it to recover before attacking again. This can make it so he has more uptime with his DPS. And last for the general ones is character skill cooldown. If you get this at +3, it's 15% duration, it's 10% at +2, and 5% at +1. And this is good for certain characters like Duchess, for instance. Guardian has a really good character skill. Iron Eye has one. Raider has one. Wilder has one. So it's good on a lot of characters. It can be used very, very effectively. So now we'll move to character-specific relics. First is Wilder. His follow-up attack with Greatsword is extremely strong. This not only increases the reach of that skill because you can actually go much further. The tracking on the skill is very good, allowing you to change like 180 degrees if you like fly past something with a grappling hook and still connect. It deals a good amount of damage. It doesn't cost stamina to use this move, which is really important for stamina management. And it also buffs your weapon for 10% of the attack power of the weapon in terms of fire damage for a short duration of time. So you can get more damage when using this as well. The one downside to this is that it will override any weapon buff that you have. So if you used Grease, or you buffed it with a spell, or the weapon you're using has like a buffing effect to it, it will override that and you'll replace it with this fire effect. And obviously it only applies to greatswords, meaning that you have to use a greatsword in order to get the most out of it. The Wilder +1 character skill use is amazing for his grappling hook, allowing you to grapple more frequently. A lot of times, Wilder will dodge away and get out of melee range of a boss in order to avoid attacks in general, and then be able to get back in melee range quickly with this. Being able to do this more frequently should improve your overall damage. And of course, art activation spreads fire in area is pretty much a must on any Wilder. This is really, really strong for increasing the overall amount of damage that this ultimate does, and when you're using this ultimate frequently, you can just down bosses quickly. For Guardian, increased duration of his character skill makes his whirlwind last a lot longer. This is really good for juggling humanoid enemies, like making it so they basically can't do anything, like if you're in encampments, or if you're fighting bosses like Banished Knights, or, you know, Beastly Brigade, or stuff like that. It's really good for rounding them up in place and making them so they can't attack you while dealing damage simultaneously, and you can throw it under big targets as well, and it's likely to hit them while you continue attacking. Reflecting a portion of damage received is also really good on Guardian. This not only deals damage to the target, which can help you maintain aggro, it also does stance damage when it hits, and if you're near downed allies, it can actually revive them as well when you're using your Steel Guard stance. So this is really, really strong overall, and I don't think you can probably play Guardian without it effectively. It's just that good. Moving on to Iron Eye. Iron Eye really only needs the +1 additional character skill use. This will allow him to remark a target if the mark is about to expire and it hasn't popped yet, or to mark a target, pop that mark and mark it again quickly, or mark a different target if that one goes down. You absolutely need that one on Iron Eye. I don't think any of the other ones are essential. Next is Duchess. Defeating enemies while art is active ups attack power. This actually makes it so that when you use her ultimate ability, if you or any of your allies defeats an enemy while you're invisible, it will increase your attack power by 15% for 30 seconds, which is actually a good amount of time and a good amount of damage. So that one is definitely worth taking. I think a lot of people are sleeping on that one. When it comes to Raider, damage taken while using his character skill improves his attack power by 10% and increases his stamina regeneration by 20%. This lasts for 20 seconds, which is a good amount of time. So you can actually, use your character skill, get this buff, use your character skill, get this buff, etc. For Revenant, power up while fighting alongside family. When you have Helen out, this gives you 1 HP per second of health regeneration. When you have Frederick out, it increases your damage by 10%. And when you have Sebastian out, it increases your damage negation by 20%. All these things are great, and you can control the buff that you want. The 20% damage negation be particularly useful in the event that's going on right now. And obviously the 10% damage is just good in general if you're hanging back and ranging spells down. I also really like Trigger Ghost Flame Explosion during Ultimate Art activation. And the reason I like this is it allows me to use this Ultimate Art offensively. Like if you run into a boss fight on the landscape and you're going to kill this boss very, very quickly, or maybe it's multiple enemies like at a holy church or an encampment or something, you can oftentimes just burst them down with this art combined with the added damage from your teammates. And it also gives you that 15-second invulnerability the ultimate by default does. So after you trigger it, you don't have to worry about dying for 15 seconds. You can just go ham and not worry about your health, burst a boss down and move on. And this just increases your speed. Gives you some flexibility with Revenant, and I really like having that one. The damage is not huge, but it's still really good at killing a bunch of trash around a boss, or just giving you invulnerability and some damage, allowing you to go ham. The next one is strengthens family and allies when Ultimate Art is activated, and this makes it so when you use her Ultimate Art, all of your family that's out, so any summons that you got from your passive or your summon, Helen, Frederick, Sebastian, as well as any allies get plus 25% damage for 30 seconds. That is a huge damage increase to your team. That is really, really strong. Moving on to Recluse, collecting Affinity Residue activates Terra Magica. This is something that will happen naturally while you're playing. You're just going to use your collecting residue as you play Recluse, and this will drop Terra Magica under you, which boosts your damage from magic for 15% while that lasts, as long as you're standing inside of it. That's a good damage increase for just doing something that you're going to do anyway. The next one for Recluse says suffer blood loss and increase attack power upon art activation. This makes it so when you use her ultimate, you lose 20% of your health and you suffer blood loss, but you gain 16% damage for 30 seconds. That's a good amount of damage. And keep in mind that even though you lose health when using this, when you attack into that boss with spells, you're going to gain that health back quickly because of the way her ultimate functions. And also there are dormant powers out there that increase your attack power when you trigger blood loss on yourself or somebody nearby. So that will, if you take those, you can get more damage out of using this. And the Lord of Blood's Exaltation Talisman, if you pick that up, will also benefit from this. And lastly, for Executor, the Roaring restores HP while art is active is a lot stronger than I think people realize. It actually heals him for 15% of his max HP, which is a lot when he's in that form. But not only for him, but also nearby allies. So you can use this and spam it if you're in a dangerous fight and people are taking damage. So if you're fighting the Gaping Jaw event boss and people are just taking lots of damage and you're in ultimate form, spam this. You'll heal up yourself and them simultaneously, which is really strong. So that wraps up our video on best relics. I hope you got something out of this one. I didn't go through every single relic in the game. There are other good relics out there. I don't want people to think that just because it wasn't covered in this video doesn't mean it's good. But these are the ones I think are the best of the best in that, aside from the character-specific relics, which are going to be only for those characters, that everyone should consider slotting if they have them. Obviously the relics that you're using in your build is not an exact science. Sometimes you have the buffs that you have from them and you can't get all the ones that you want, but I hope this gives you some idea what some of these do so that you can look for them in your relics, and maybe you'll notice some relics are a lot better than you originally thought. How did I do on my list? Did I miss any of them? Are there relics that you would have included? Are there ones on here that shouldn't be on here? Let me know in the comments below.